All right, so I will put in that link one more time so that we all have it, because I know a couple people came in. Welcome back, Kate. What we are going to do is look at PBL today. And the purpose of today is to give everybody some resources to be looking at, things to be thinking about. You could spend days and days and days and months and months and months on PBL. And there's a lot of different places you can go, a lot of different authors you can read, and you can honestly go down the rabbit hole of getting lost as you try to do that. But what we've kind of focused a lot of what we're going to be showing you is stuff through AJ Giuliani and through PBL Works and the BIE, who pushes out a lot of different things on project-based learning. Like I said, if you've done this in the past, you've done these different things, and you know there's X, Y, and Z that also does really great stuff, please let us know about it. Like I said, we could spend 12 days, 12 months on this. So as all of you are feeling the burn, I'm sure, I know that Kate told me that I looked really tired at an earlier meeting.
Nice to share with everyone. There were 2 people in that meeting.
Well, I had to. No, you know, I'm sure we are all exhausted in a variety of different ways. I know that I am. I don't want to speak for Kate, but you know, we're feeling that burn of all of that. I always think this is hilarious that, and we don't have a dog right now, but you know, the dog's looking at us like, see, this is why I chew the furniture. The joke's on us, I guess, for the dogs. So the first slide here, if you click on that book, it'll take you to a site that I'll get out to in a moment. But in here, he's AJ Giuliani. If you've never read any of his things, listen to him. He is an author and educator that does a lot in design thinking. Launch, he co-wrote, as well as Empower. And then this book here, the PBL Playbook, it came out a couple years ago. For a while, he was giving them out for free. I was one of the suckers that went and bought it myself, but before he put that out. But you know, you can get it for free. It is a really, really good book, and he's a really easy author to read. But he's got a site, and this is the site here that has different resources. So even if you haven't read the book and you wanted to click around a little bit, each chapter has you know, some different videos that will give you some different things, some guiding questions. But what I really like is the resources here. So like the research behind choice and inquiry-based teaching, which goes into some different things. The articles on inquiry and research. So obviously this one was about you know, inquiry-based learning and teaching and things like that. So if you do have the book and you're like, you know what, I never really got around to read it, I would really suggest reading it. And again, it's something that you can read fairly quickly. But his site is very good. In a little bit, we'll take you to his blog website that has a couple of different articles. One that we're going to focus specifically on what PBL looks like in the elementary classroom, because I know that's difficult to conceptualize sometimes. But also, you know, to push out, like he sends out either daily or every other day emails that have really great articles. He had one that a teacher at the high school sent me that talked about, you know, what we're doing isn't online learning, it's something else. And so he's very good. He also has a quote in one of his areas: if you get 1% better each day for 1 year, you end up 37 times better by the time you're done. I think this is important for me to keep thinking about, and that's why we put it in here. You know, as we looked, we've all grown a tremendous amount in the last, how many weeks it's been? 3 weeks, 2 weeks? I lose track. 21 days maybe. But for our kids to be thinking of that as, you know, we're going down this endeavor of growth and learning and all that, but as well as ourselves. And obviously, you're all here. You wouldn't buy into that. For the sake of putting a little bit too much text on a slide, which Kate and I always tell everybody not to. These are some different things that I thought were pretty important to look at, because a lot of times when I get started with project-based learning, or I look with different things, they end up being projects, and the intent is good with project-based learning, but true project-based learning looks much more at students have choices during the project, whereas a project, the students have a couple of choices. So like maybe you can pick 1, 2, or 3 choice, but they don't have choices as to what their learning is. And it looks different at each level. So if you're a K1 and 2 teacher or whatever, you may say, well, our kids need that structure. And I agree. I think they can have some different choices along the way. Whereas a project is if you pick project 1, project 2, or project 3, and you do everything that goes into that. There isn't choice going through. And that's one of the differences with that. Project-based learning starts with a driving question. Whereas, projects are much more do this set of directions and everything like that. It's open. Students have choices, as we talked about. It's relevant to their lives. And I think this is a really important one because especially if you are a 5th and 6th grade, if you're any grade level teacher, but especially 5th and 6th grade teacher, where the kids are starting to, ask more of why does this even matter in my life? All those different things. Project-based learning brings things that are relevant to their lives, and it resembles what they would be doing in the real world. For our high school kids, like we want things that are going to be looking at what they're going to be doing in the work world and all that stuff. For us elementary folks, what's it going to look like in the real world? Whereas like a project doesn't necessarily resemble real world. It just resembles them being able to accomplish tasks. And one of the biggest ones is that, project-based learning is different. It's different, and that's hard. And we'll get into some different tools that you can look at, and you can use, just whatever, remix, whatever you want to use for yourself that helps with some of the different checkpoints, and how you can kind of manage that circus. So we're not going to watch this video, but this is a really good video that's under 5 minutes by John Spencer, who co-writes a lot of times with AJ Giuliani. He's done a couple books with him. But in here, he talks about his journey as a student and why he became an educator and why he became an educator in project-based learning, specifically in the design process. Because school, regular, sit and everything like that wasn't for him. And luckily he has some teachers that kind of pulled him out of that. But in here, it also talks about, according to Buck Institute for Education, which partners with PBL Works, which partners with a lot of different things and is on the cutting edge of project-based learning, there are 7 main components to PBL. And the first one is a challenging problem or question. And I think that is something that we all have started to work with a lot more, but that's super important that, there's a question that drives whatever that is. There's sustained inquiry. So if this is something you're like, I think that we're going to build something that is going to be cross-curricular that we can do over these next X amount of weeks that we're going to have for the rest of school. Our kids have nothing but time with some of that. So that sustained inquiry is here now, and that's an important part. They have to have time to be able to question, to be able to research, to be able to think, create all of those things. There needs to be authenticity, student voice and choice. And they need to reflect. And if you sat through any of the code.org stuff we did last year with me, you know that I am huge on reflection, as a lot of us are, but they need to reflect and then see what is going well, what isn't, what changes they need to make, what they've learned, how that has affected them. It doesn't need to be like super elaborate. It can be reflection in emojis. It can be reflection in one-word answer. It can be as in-depth as, a couple sentence reflection or whatever that looks like. It be. They could reflect in pictures. There's a lot of different types of reflection you can do that brings in different parts of the brain for the kids. There's critique and revision, and then there's a public product, something that they're able to create and that shows what they've learned and what, and that learning, that public product could possibly not be the end of what their research is and all of those things, but it's an iteration of that. So this slide here, if you click on the AJ Giuliani logo, it's going to take you to a site here we'll go to in a minute. But PBL helps you to attain these 5 things on average with everything. With academic achievement, it brings in 21st century competencies. I mean, how long have we been talking about 21st century learning and what we need to be able to do? It does all of those different things. It provides equity and the ability for the kids to pick, do voice and choice, work at a pace that has some flexibility. One of the big ones is it provides motivation and this is huge because it's something that they like theoretically, that they're interested in, they have a passion for. Sometimes we call we call these passion projects or things like that, but it brings in motivation and it brings in teacher satisfaction because the kids are motivated, they want to learn, they want to be doing these different things. And if you've done anything that's been open-ended before, which all of you have, you see the kids go to the ends of the earth for some of that if they're engaged in it. So the site here is, this is actually an article that goes into what does project-based learning look in an elementary classroom. And so we wanted to share this so that you had concrete examples. And I know you got a slide, but it'll give some different examples from a variety of different levels at the elementary level. So here's a grade 2 teacher one. Here is geometry in bringing in math. It brings in what it can look like in economics and book unit. A lot of different examples here. But one of the bigger things we wanted to share with you and show you is he has a tremendous site. And like I said, he's an educator. He's a really good writer and speaker. And he is somebody that if you want to look at more of his articles, you can get into his blog. You can get to a bunch of different places. And he has some really great stuff. He's got a good talking voice. So if you listen to any of his podcasts, they're engaging, they're entertaining. His co-writer, John Spencer, is very entertaining. I like A.J. Giuliani's work a little bit better, but they're both very entertaining. So it's something you could definitely check out. The next thing that we'll look at, so we talked a lot about there at the beginning as to why we do PBL, what it could be, what are the components of it, but then how do you figure out the Rubik's Cube that is planning for this? Because it can be very overwhelming at first and along the way to conceptualize, okay, what do I want them to do? What does this, how can I have 24 kids be doing different things and manage that? And I'm trying to stand on my head with 18 other things anyways. And we like this checklist because it gives and it's short. One of the reasons we like it and we picked it is because it's short, but it brings in some concrete things for you as a teacher to be planning and thinking about. So, what are your goals and outcomes? And while everybody's going to have some voice and choice and some different things, what is the intended outcome going to be? And I think that's a really great place to start. So, have you done that? What do we want the problem question to be? Is it defined at the start of the project? Is this something on keeping the earth green, and what are the things we see? Different examples that way. What are the learning targets? Are they defined and measurable? And I'm not talking about are they defined and can you put a quantitative grade to it? No, are they measurable that they've done what they need to be doing? Is it a good, great, okay scale? Different things that way. What are the standards that you want to hit? The skills and competencies. A couple of different other things here. And then what does the product look like? And is there time built in for reflection and iterative process? Because that's a huge part. So that reflection, whether it's a peer reflection or it's a teacher giving reflection back to the student, and then can they take that? Can I take your feedback and make it better? So those are some different things. The next slide then gets into, and if you click on it, it's going to force you to make a copy. So again, another shameless plug. If you come to our G Suite session later today, we'll show you how to make a copy, force a copy that may be helpful to you later. But this is a project planner, and in here it goes into pretty in depth what things you can think about. So the idea isn't for you just to take this and use it exactly. You don't need to fill out every line or do every part, but what is your driving question going to be? What's the time frame? What is the project summary? What ideas do you have for learning goals? And this is where you can really get to showing multi-disciplines and what are the literacy skills, what are the success skills, what are the standards we're going to hit. And this is where you can take 3 different subjects and it'd be a longer term project-based model, and you're not necessarily creating a ton of different quantitative assignments for the kids to do, but you're doing like one in-depth, deep DOK levels of things for them to be doing with that. And then the big one that helped me, and when I did project-based learning as a classroom teacher, I reflected after going through a lot of this that I've both done projects when I thought it was project-based learning. I did project-based learning, and I didn't realize I was doing it. But the project milestones is enormous because it is difficult to say, okay, I'm going to give the kids 3 weeks to do this. And then if any of your kids are like me personally, I'm a procrastinator by life. So I would just wait until the last day. And that doesn't help that iterative processes, the reflection, all of those different things. So these milestones, you can use this chart and seeing like what are formative assessments that go along with that. You know, how are you going to capture that student learning as we go through? And then it gives you an project calendar that you can use and change for you, that you could give out to the kids, and this is what they need to be looking at as they go through. And depending on if you are, a first grade teacher or you are a fifth grade teacher or whatever grade level you're teaching, you can modify this so that if you need to chunk it up better, you chunk it up better. Or we've got kiddos that struggle with long-term projects without this. This is a perfect example of what you can give them to help them piece together, those different parts. And then I'll give some lesson planning ideas, the things that you can look at. Kate, are we doing all right with questions?
Yep. Good.
Okay. So the last thing before we get into what I think is an awesome website is, with anything, rubrics are going to be, especially in this case, the best way to be assessing, to seeing if they're doing X, Y, and Z at the standard. And so we put in a couple of different examples of, the idea is for you to get some ideas to put together one rubric. And this one is solely on creativity and innovation rubric. And if you just wanted to assess that, you could just assess that. And this is pretty good. All of these things that we put in here have been created by teachers over one step or another. So there's a couple of different rubrics in there that you can access. We're going to go into the PBL Works site here in a moment. That if you've never been on there, this is an awesome site. And so in the slide deck, the very last slide here, if you click on this PBL Works thing, it's going to take you to this site. And if you've never made an account, it will ask you to make an account so you can get all the resources. It's free to make that account. And there are a lot of different things here. And like I said, there's a lot of different places you can go. PBL Works is extraordinary. My cousin works in Arlington County as a STEM coordinator with one of the magnet schools, and they endorsed and used PBL Works, and he said it's gone fantastic this year, up until they had to close. But in here, there are a ton of different resources, and one of the big things is it gives projects. And so you can look at it based down to the K2 level, the 3-5 level, the 6-8 level, and you can get into subjects. So if I wanted to look at something 3rd through 5th grade, and I wanted to do something ELA based. Some of them are going to give you a lot of examples. Some of them are going to give you, not as much. But in here, here would be one that would be an example of healthy choices, long life. So if I click on that, it's going to give me some download project files that I can use. It can give me project resources, and some will give you a lot. Some will give you just some. And I think that as I've gone through a lot of these, they're really good. It's just kind of unpacking what they have for you. And then, so like I said, there's projects that you can get into from all of these different subject areas. If you're a 3rd through 5th grade or K2 teacher, there's 15 different projects that are just for your grade level, that you can use as frameworks for beginnings. You take the tiny house and do the tiny house. I've seen that one before this. You could do the tiny house exactly as it says and suggests it to do, or you can take it and iterate it to what would work for your class, for your kids, for everything like that. And then there's a ton of different resources. So there's articles, project videos you could watch. Then there are planning tools, rubrics, strategy guides, student handouts that you could give out, use, adjust. So like, in these rubrics, which the one I showed you, we took from here, it has a critical thinking, creativity, and innovation presentation rubrics that, if this is something you really want to get into, you could take parts of each of those into one. And you don't really have to recreate anything. All you have to do is just some of that formatting. But you can get into some planning tools and stuff for you, as well as stuff that you give out to the kids. So I can't talk enough about this site because it is constantly being updated, because it is constantly at cutting edge research. They just sent out a thing for this morning. I saw it for 4 different PBL workshops that you can sign up for that I'll send out later. A lot of different things that are on the front line of what we need in terms of project-based learning. So I definitely would highly encourage signing up for this if you haven't already. It takes 2 seconds to make an account, and then you get access to their blogs, some bookstore stuff, events, all of these different things. So with that being said, any questions that we have? I went kind of fast there because I was worried I'm going to run out of time. But the goal of today was to give us a broad overview of PBL and get us into, okay, what is it really, as opposed to what we see with projects, but then also to give you some resources to take away. I really would definitely start with the first PBL checklist, the one pager from AJ Giuliani that is concrete. It's small, it's short, it doesn't require you to scroll a lot. That you can start to conceptualize what would be good for you, and then definitely take some of the PBL resources, and like everything Kate and I have shown you, this we've tried to, is given you somewhere to start so that you're not starting from scratch in terms of ideas, templates, things like that. Kate, any questions or things that I'm missing?
You're good. The only question we had was, do you have to sign up for the account or to see the entire lesson? And I wasn't sure, so I checked it and it wouldn't let me see the entire.
Yeah, you do. It's free. That part is free. Anything you want to add, Kate?
No, I said it in the other one, I really like that checklist because as somebody who gets overwhelmed and there's multiple pieces coming together, the pink one.
Yes.
That's my favorite part. It kind of makes everything concise and chunks it for you. It's a good starting point.
Sorry, I'm looking at the comments now, questions. So there are a couple books. Someone asked about a couple books floating around. I'm sure Natalie has a ton of books, but I know this one is floating around because I think Kim got a few of them whenever they came out. Or maybe we signed up for a bunch of free ones. But I'm happy to share mine with anybody. I've read it a couple times. And there's a lot of books. This one is very easy for me to read. So.
Yeah, we also have the PDF in our email.
Yes. Yes, we do. I had to think what we were talking about. Yes. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to stay on, or you can just unmute your mic. If you just want to stay on and you've got this time to you want to ask us other things, feel free to. But we will be doing one at 1:30 as well. And then we'll probably be sorry to send out another survey, but we'll be sending out something to everyone that will kind of drive what we want to look at next week and the weeks beyond. Just things that will be helpful for you guys so that we're making things relevant to you.